if you hear the announcers talk on TV when they're narrating or commentating any of the matches, they're like, "Oh, that player seems a little bit tight," right? And that's usually in a higher pressure situation. So the reason I was addressing the grip is because I think a lot of athletes can relate to that across every sport, right? You get a little bit of pressure on you, you get a little bit tighter. Like you said, your feels are a little bit off, but it's like how do we get better at managing that situation, right? When you feel like, hey, the pressure's on me today, I feel tight, but now I got to figure out a way to navigate it. How do we navigate that situation?
Well, the first that you can do physically, which helps your mental state, is
Thanks for the good laugh. All
yeah.
right. So, really, where I wanted to get started is we keep giving updates on the world record event. I'm still thinking about your cable with the Wi Fi, but that's okay. um, so, with the world record event, you said you had practice the other day, have some good news about it. Also, some updates. Why don't you update us with that?
Yeah. So the venue, as you know, is in Stamford, Connecticut. It's called
Mm,
Pickleball America. They have 13 pickleball courts. The record is going to be held on one of the primary courts that's less distractions. And there's still room for the press encounters and all of that. But then we're going to be running a charity event, and the monies goes to save the children. It's going to be, instead of a tournament, it's not going to be that formal or official. It's going to be an intermediate and then advanced, up and down the river kind of thing, up and down and split like I've done in the past. So that's going to be really fun. And
that's
yeah,
on event day
uh,
or
on
event
event
day?
day. So
Okay.
during the day, so the
Mm,
record starts at noon, and from, let's say, noon to 4, noon to 5, there'll be a couple of sessions of at least 10 courts, most likely 10 courts of, and since the record is 10,000, that'd be nice to have 10 courts of things going on to raise money and
yeah.
awareness for Save the Children. So that's really good. And then I'm trying to find the stats, because then my brother and I did do uh, a world record practice indoors. So now it's our first indoor practice. As you know, the outdoor ones have been challenging just because of the sun and the
Hmm.
wind. And I want to give you the right numbers here. So let me see here. Let me
You
get
did you track like how many balls per minute over a period of time, etc.?
We did. We did. And
Okay,
I want to give you those
perfect.
numbers. Typically, we never, when we're practicing, disclose those things just because it might put expectations. But I'm happy
Yeah,
to do it because, really, we want to inspire others to achieve their world records and their dreams. And so if this helps someone in any way, uh, then that's great. Let's see here. All right. I am trying to find it.
you're good. So on the other stats while you're looking for them. So the other stats that you tracked, I'm guessing is going to be total volleys, right? How many volleys back and forth,
Oh, here it is.
and
Got it.
then okay,
Got it. Okay. So we we practice. We wanted a half hour practice. We practice exactly 29 minutes and 21 seconds without a miss. We did a
okay,
countdown like we normally do. So we first make it like a real point. So I'm going to serve, and then we know that I'm going to start the volley rally and end the volley rally like we've done in the past, because I was born first by 10 minutes. So, got to do it. So I
yeah,
served, he returned. I hit a third shot drop that landed in the non volley zone. So I was happy about that. He hit then a ball off the bounce, a longer dink. I volleyed his first dink. We did that for 29 minutes and 21 seconds. We volleyed, believe it or not, 2,438 volleys without a miss. Then we did it, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Then I caught the ball. And that means that would be 4,980 volleys per hour. So 10,000 would take 2 hours and 1 minute.
Okay.
And if we volleyed, let's see here, 16,046, which was our world record for the rally, that would take 3 hours and 12 minutes. So I don't want to be overconfident, but those are good numbers. I will say that we were in flow state for probably about 15 minutes, 10 minutes of that half hour. So we were really racking up a higher number. But unfortunately, there was a backhand volley or two. I think there was a couple of, I wouldn't say ones on point of contact, but there were some 1.5s uncomfortably near the edge. So there was, I would say, maybe 4 or 5 saves in the half hour. So we're cautiously optimistic because, when you have to save the ball and it's not where you think it's going to be and you don't hit it the way you intended to, those are scary moments.
How was it in that 15 minutes of flow state, though? How was the
Great.
3-on contact? Great.
All threes.
So kind of referencing your previous records too, when you're saying like all threes in that 15 minutes, did you fall in and out of it in the previous records? Like, were you in flow state for a couple hours and then fell out and then came back in? Or once you hit flow state, you were really just locked in for the remainder of the time? Like how did it look?
I would say the beginning of every rally is always unique. And so you're feeling, I wouldn't say anxious, but you're definitely really excited in the very beginning. You're more excited in the very beginning than you are any other time, except when you set the record. And then you're really excited. So I would say pretty much the whole time after the beginning. So for the longest tennis volley rally, the 30,576 rally, that was on Federer's birthday. That one, I would say the first 100 volleys were really shaky. Once you get by the first 100 and then the first 1,000, then you start to really find your flow state, but you can't overthink it. Things I want to work on in practice are my grip tension on my right hand was a little too much. So then I was sweating. And then when you sweat, I couldn't really release the grip. I was trying to relax it. I couldn't really relax my hand much. So I don't want to have to grin and bear it. I want to be able to sit there and be relaxed and as if I could do it all day. But if I have to grin and bear it for some portions of it, then I'll do whatever is necessary.
Mid-rally, how do you keep those thoughts away from your brain? Meaning, realistically, right, if you're volleying back and forth, as we know, the margin for error, especially on this world record, is much, much smaller, right? So with that being said, if you're focused on your grip too much, if you're focused on, your paddle angle too much, you're ultimately going to lose focus and possibly get a 1 or 1.5. So how are you kind of dismissing those thoughts through that process and then staying on the task at hand?
So I would just rephrase. It's not really dismissing the thought, because a thought is a thought and it is what it is. So just like a make is what it is. So I treat them equally important. It's just one of them you're going to allow to flow by you like the wind. And then the focus goes back to the point of contact. So it's accepting that your mind is going somewhere. Like they had a huge
Elvis principle.
Yeah, the Elvis principle, accept whatever is there and stay
Yeah.
focused. But to my left, so there was not a court to our right on the one we practiced on. We did practice on a different court than the one we're going to use. It was two courts next to it. So on my left, there were people playing, and every once in a while I was thinking, are they noticing that we're just volleying this whole time with one ball? Do they care? Who cares?
Mm.
And with my brother, he said it was a distraction because behind him and his eye line, there's people walking in and out of the mall and in and out of the Pickleball America. So that is going to be tricky. So when we move over, there's a wall behind. And so we're going to figure out really not to have people walk too much behind that.
Mm.
Also, I purposely want the clock in front of me. There was no clock on the court, but I want to be able to look up at the clock every once in a while. But I will say that's very dangerous because I tried to look
I
to
was
my
going to ask
left.
that.
Yeah, I tried to look to my left for the clock, and I never in the half hour looked to my left because it was too far to the left, and then you have to get back and track the ball. So the ball is coming too quickly. So to do much of that, but I think the most difficult thing that I had to figure out, and we had a blink strategy for the tennis world record, because what happens is if you don't tell yourself you to blink, you won't. So what ends up happening is your eyes get really sore and dry because your eyes are open the whole time.
I
So
wouldn't even think of that.
yeah, so the things I have to do better in my next practice are my right hand relaxation. I was doing well with my left for blood flow, but then the blinking strategy, so my eyes were really sore after a half hour. So I have to experiment also with sunglasses that basically drown out the glare of the light, because it's kind of like this. You don't notice that there is always some directness to indirect light. There's always some directness. And it's fine when you're playing a point and you go back to the baseline, your eye line is going to change. But when the eye line is exactly the same for 4 hours, 2 hours, 1 hour, a half hour, that what ends up happening is those lights create those spots on your eyes. So you know how, like, you look in the sun directly,
Yeah.
and then you close your eyes, you see sunspots. You start to see light spots, and then you start to lose the ball. And that's probably the most difficult thing that we're going to have to deal with.
I think anybody that's gone through, if I'm being honest, has gone through the school system, whether it's public or private or whatever. Like, there are times in class when you're staring at the board, right? You're staring at a PowerPoint for a long period of time. You're watching something that they're educating you on, and you're just like so intently watching that your eyes kind of go blurry, right? And you start seeing a little bit of what people say sometimes are like stars, but really like blurry vision, right? You're not in a concussion state. Um, but something that I wanted to comment on, because I think people are probably a little curious, is like you did talk about your grip multiple times and like why a loose grip is important. Can you tell us like why it's so important that you are not holding the paddle so tightly over that period of time, besides just like fatigue on your arm? Like what else about it?
Well, the first is that when you have a rigid grip, your muscles are less flexible. So it's kind of like
Mm,
hitting the ball rather than pushing the ball freely. So you want the volley to be more of a free push that is clean on the sweet spot, not a hit. And so you want a little bit of a finish to it, kind of like a rhythm. So you develop that rhythm. And then the second, just from a muscle relaxation, if you relax your fingers, so let's say there are 3 on grip pressure, grip relaxation, it's really loose. But the problem is that since you only have a second to then prepare for the next shot, it's difficult to relax your fingers between
mm,
shots. So it's almost like an all or none. You either do it or you don't do it. So I have to kind of figure that out. But when the day comes, I'm not going to think about it, but I
Mm.
have to think about it now actively because I have to figure out a game plan. But the final one, the third one is circulation, which is really important because when you grip something so long, you don't get circulation in your fingertips. And so you need to have circulation.
Your hand goes numb midway through and you just drop the paddle.
Yeah. Yeah. Or you just lose feel of where
Mm.
the ball is on the paddle, which is dangerous because you could be hitting 1.5s thinking they're threes.
So this is kind of a good segue to a little bit what we talked today, and I think that like a lot of people right now are relating to. So we talked a little bit about pressure today,
Yeah.
right? And if you hear the announcers talk on TV when they're narrating or commentating any of the matches, they're like, "Oh, that player seems a little bit tight," right? And that's usually in a higher pressure situation. So the reason I was addressing the grip is because I think a lot of athletes can relate to that across every sport, right? You get a little bit of pressure on you, you get a little bit tighter. Like you said, your feels are a little bit off. But it's like, how do we get better at managing that situation, right? When you feel like, hey, the pressure's on me today, I feel tight, but now I got to figure out a way to navigate it. How do we navigate that situation?
Well, the first that you can do physically, which helps your mental state, is breathing. Focus on your breathing. So, what I've realized is that breathing is going to happen automatically because your body wants to stay alive. So,
Mm.
you are going to breathe whether you like it or not, whether you think about it or not. But it's not always going to be the most productive breathing for sport. So it's not going to always be the most productive breathing for relaxation. So the classic example I use is there's a lot of professional basketball players that don't necessarily do it correctly on the free throw line. What you notice a lot of times is
Mm.
they bounce the ball and they go,
Yep.
and that is a quick inhale and a quick exhale. And that is actually hyperventilating. You're actually
Mm.
creating more nervous energy by doing that. Rather, you should, 3 seconds in through your mouth because you can get more oxygen, hold for three, and then exhale for three. And I'm all about the number three. So it's 3 seconds in, hold for three, and then 3 seconds out as slowly as you possibly can, only through your nose.
Mm.
If you do that 3 times, you are going to be unbelievably relaxed. I've actually had some people get even lightheaded almost because they do that so well and they exhale so well. But that is, you feel light, you feel free.
I think
You don't
anybody
feel
I think
tension.
anybody that is like referencing like, hey, where can I go like even learn this? Obviously you could learn it just from Angel saying it. But if you want to reference online too, usually it's referenced as like box breathing. So I don't think the count matters as much as long as it's slower and consistent. So for example, like Angela uses 3. I think box breathing references 4. I think there's another method that references 5. But I think the overall narrative, as Angel just talked about, is like you feel lighter, you feel calmer, and therefore your body actually gets less tense, correct? And your
Yeah.
muscles relax as a secondary effect.
Well, so
Now,
I think
how
the first thing is breathing is, am I breathing? Then
yeah,
it's, how am I breathing? And there's the 5-7-9 method as well. There's other methods, but I think it's not necessarily the duration, although that's important. It depends
yeah,
on Some sports like fencing, you have less time between bouts and points than other
Mm,
sports like pickleball. So it depends
I
on
didn't
the
think of that.
sport, but I wouldn't recommend in through your mouth, out through your mouth, or random. I wouldn't do it randomly, because what I've found is when you're fatigued, you go in through your mouth, out through your mouth. And when you're not fatigued, you're in a more relaxed state, you tend to have a tendency to go in through your nose, out through your nose. You can't leave it to chance. The reason why I've developed that you go in through your mouth is you get more
Mm,
oxygen. You want more oxygen. And then the reason why,
I was going to ask you that.
yeah, the pause is because it gets rid of the butterflies, or some people call it, diaphragmatic breathing, and through your
Mm,
diaphragm, not just through your lungs, and then out through your nose as slowly as you possibly can. So I totally agree with you. Cadence is really important, but you're going slow because it's calming you down. It has a calming effect, even if the out is 5 seconds. But it's easy to remember 3, 3, and 3. So as long as it's slow as it goes out and not that quick out, then I find that just has a soothing effect on you when everything else seems like it's chaos.
like if I'm in the middle of a match and I'm feeling that pressure, I'm feeling that tightness, I'm up 10-9, I know it's a critical point, right? In that scenario, am I better off calling, "Hey, let me call an offensive timeout. Let me take my deep breath here. Let me get that mind cleared. Let me get that body loose again, and let's step back out there and finish this game."
Yeah,
Is
I've done that almost all of the timeouts I've ever taken. I've had a lead. so
yeah.
it's not gamesmanship. It's actually
Yeah,
practical. It's practical in nature. Is catch your breath. And what I found is the 3-3-3 method that I developed for breathing is
yeah.
difficult to do when you have had a very long point and you've expended a lot of energy and you're breathing heavy. That breathing method is to calm you down. It's not to catch your breath. If you're trying to
Mm,
catch your breath, it is very difficult to catch your breath with your nose. There's not enough happening. So you sometimes have to catch your breath with your mouth, and then you go to the pause and the exhale. But the pause and the exhale through your nose is much more difficult when you're really winded.
mm. So now staying on the topic of pressure in these situations, that is going to get me to relax my body. How do I also relax my mind in that scenario?
Yeah. So think of the exhale as releasing the last point.
Okay.
So when you get to the exhale in your breathing, your last point should be removed from your mind. If it's not, you need to do another 3-3-3 breath. And and you probably are not going to have enough time to do more than 3. I say that you have to make time for at least one, or you're not ready for the next point. And if you've released the point, and a lot of people say, "Yeah, but I don't want to release the point. That was my best shot ever. I want to hang on to the highlight reel." And what I say is, well, that's why it's called a highlight reel. You watch it when you're done. You don't watch it during the game.
Mm.
So, it's like admire how good you are after, not during.
So on the exhale, I'm releasing the previous point, good or bad. And now after that, now I'm prepping for the next point, right? I'm getting ready to actually walk back out there, get that serve if I am on the serve, and
Yep.
finish this game out, right?
Yeah, and I would just clarify, you don't want to say good or bad. There's no good or bad in sports. It's
Yeah.
because you're judging yourself. But I know what you mean. A productive point or a counter effect.
Regardless of what the outcome is, yeah.
Yeah,
So
regardless
on
of
the
the outcome.
revert so on the reverse side of things, and you might not have been prepared for me to ask this question. So on the reverse side of things, right? We talked about pressure, but the opposite end also happens to athletes, as you know. It's like I'm in a game and I just feel like I can't get myself ready. Like I can't get my body going. maybe it's not necessarily lethargic, but like from an emotional standpoint or a physical standpoint, I just can't get going. Like I can't get myself to move. Is there other tactics to do that half if it is breathing driven, right? To really get my adrenaline system going, or another method to really wake myself up and get myself involved?
So that's called, what you're describing is called your state of arousal. So there's an
Mm,
optimal state of arousal when you compete. And if you don't put enough pressure on yourself, that's like you fall asleep during competition, just not finding it. Your arousal state is not high enough. But when you're too excited, bouncing around too much, you're over aroused, then you can't think straight, you can't perform well.
mm,
So there's that equilibrium where your state of awakeness and arousal is at the optimal level, and that's where you find your flow state. So it's, I call it care enough not to care. You care enough about what you're doing, but you don't care at the same time, because the not caring allows you to be there, not force yourself to be there, or to let it happen rather than to make it happen. So if you're not feeling it and you're not there for some reason, take a lap, do a sprint, do use a jump rope, something like that, quick hands, quick feet, something like that. And then if you're over the top, that's where you do that 3-3-3 breathing to bring yourself down, your anxiety level down. Or I like to say, you turn anxious and nerves into, you flip it into excitement. But you cannot have a feeling and a thought at the same time. It's not possible, except for static feelings like love. So yes, you could love pickleball and you could be in flow state, but you can't be so fired up from the last point. Yes, that was amazing. And then be calm and present for the next point.
mm.
I mentioned it in my book, Tenacity, but that's why, heart surgeons have that room where they go. It's very quiet and calm, and they immerse themselves in the calmness, because they can't be emotional when they're performing heart surgery. They have to not be jittery, they can't be excited, you know they can't tie it to the outcome, they can't be thinking about what if this goes wrong. They have to be perfectly calm and present in what they're doing and think clearly.
Mm. So, like, a lot of players bounce up and down in between points, at the net, at the baseline. Is that a trigger that a lot of them have to get themselves going point to point if they feel like, "Hey, I'm not my body's not ready to go. I'm not at that optimal arousal state."
Yeah, and it might not be that. That might be their routine, and that
Okay.
gets them into the match. And a classic example, if you look at the sport of tennis, when Rafael Nadal and Roger Federer would play against each other, it was so classic. Two of the top players of all time, and yet
Yeah.
they had completely different routines at the beginning of the match. Nadal would bounce up and down and bounce around right before the coin toss. Then he would turn, sprint as fast as he could back to the baseline and bounce around and turn back around. It was unbelievable display of energy. And then Federer was completely opposite, very calm, almost ice cold, very matter of fact, almost nonchalant, effortless, turn around, walk back to the baseline, sign autographs. No, but he would walk back to the baseline, get the balls from the
I know
ball
what you're
kids,
saying.
and practice his game. And yet both were remarkably successful. So I'd said the routine is got to be natural for you.
Mm.
What's best for you, and find what's best for you, and then write it down, and that should become your routine.
So, I guess there's 2 components then. One of it is, like, what is your routine that gets you closest to an optimal arousal state, right? Puts you close to it. Then the second piece is, like, if I'm struggling to get there, what else can I do to get my body going, whether it is jumping around, like you said, with a jump rope. If it is in the middle of a game, maybe it is bouncing up and down. Maybe it is a couple quick inhales of some extent to get your, as you mentioned, right? One way is calming. You also mentioned the other way is really getting your body going, right? Almost hyperventilating to a certain extent. Yes, you don't want to make yourself hyperventilate, but you are, I believe it's defined as just the sympathetic nervous system versus the parasympathetic. I only get this because I'm a whooper. Whoever people wear a whoop, right? It defines that for you. So like one is your rest and digest, and the other one is like fight, freeze, or fawn, right? So you're just trying to get your other nervous system going is really what you're trying to do. So you can also do that with breathing. But the reason that I wanted to address that is because I think every athlete, one, we just talked about pressure, and every athlete can relate to it. On the one end of the spectrum of feeling too much pressure, and on the other end of the spectrum, like really not feeling enough if what you're getting, if that's what you're getting at, right? Not feeling enough, not caring enough at that time, right? But either way, awesome stuff today. I like how we were super tactical, right? I think that so many people are going to relate to that heavily and really get massive takeaways. To emphasize again, we will have a link down below for Save the Children so that you can go and donate throughout this entire event. It is once again on August 17th. It will officially be at Pickleball America in Stamford, Connecticut, which is fabulous. The Rossetti brothers are making tremendous progress throughout this process. And the world record is going to be set. Now, I guess one question I have for you, why I was saying that, was, are you, so right now the record to be set is 10,000.
Yeah.
I know you're not going to say we're stopping at 10,000 volleys. What are you setting as a number or reference in order to achieve?
So that's an interesting question. And
Yeah.
I always say, if you try to quantify your success, you'll always sell yourself short.
Okay.
On or off the court. So it goes by, have you fulfilled your purpose? So we're going to stop when we're ready. And I have no idea what that's going to be, but I do know for a fact it's going to be higher than 10,000 for two reasons. One, because the primary one, it fulfilled our purpose. We honored our late mom, and we raised a lot of attention and awareness for Save the Children. But then the second piece of that is that there are people counting, and in the past we've had people miscount higher than what it was. So
I remember that.
We have to plan a big enough margin that if there's a slight mistake in numbers, that we would have still had the record. So that's what I would say, in that regard, is it's going to be high enough that it's that there won't be any. It would account for any miscalculations.
So number to be determined, but summary is that it will be over 10,000.
Yeah, over 10,000. The actual number of hours and minutes and the actual number of successful volleys is TBD. Yeah.
All tied to the fact of when the mission is completed, the purpose is completed, you'll know.
Yeah. And yeah, it's I'm excited for that feeling when you know you've set the record and you're still going. There's that feeling of euphoria. And it's a feeling of euphoria. It's a feeling that's difficult to describe, but you feel like what you're doing in your life is in balance and you're right where you need to be. It was when Tsitsipas won a really amazing tennis match, and he said that it's like euphoric, and I've had that feeling many times before, but the I would say there's like pickleball is like life, right? And sports are like life. So I've had 3 times in sport and 3 times in life. When I got married on my wedding day, when I had my first child, Maddie, when I had my
Mm.
second child, Andy, and then the third one